4.3 billion people live across this vast continent called Asia, and we are telling their stories. On this edition, Danger Zone, how Lebanon's conflicted past still echoes today, putting thousands of lives in danger. Battling a child killer, workers in Afghanistan put their lives on the line to eradicate a crippling and deadly disease. And scarred for life, the victims of acid attacks in India go on the offensive to put a stop to a horrific crime.
I'm Natalie Carney, and this is Assignment Asia. Lebanon is one of the most contaminated countries in the world when it comes to cluster munitions. All around, unexploded bombs and mines are buried underground, left over from past conflicts. Thousands have been maimed, even killed by them. I traveled around southern Lebanon to further investigate the problem and met with one group that's not letting tragedy stop them.
As a bomb disposal officer, it's extremely tough. So sometimes you'll go in there, your heart pounds, you sweat, for sure.
Southern Lebanon is a patchwork of rolling hills, vast fields, and large boulders. Sleepy villages are scattered throughout the landscape, and so are more than 4 million cluster bombs and more than 500,000 mines, the legacy of Lebanon's many conflicts over the last 40-some years. It's 5 a.m. and this group is preparing for another day's work. Since 2006, the Mines Advisory Group has cleared nearly 70% of the endangered areas, the size of about 200 football fields. They're one of several NGOs helping the Lebanese army clear the land of landmines and other munitions. Each time they go out, they're risking their lives. About 5,000 cluster bombs are on these mountainsides in Zoutar West. Only 10% have been found. In this challenging terrain, each searcher must take extra safety precautions as they meticulously check every inch of ground. It could be days before something is found, but when that metal detector goes off, the searcher carefully marks the area and the site is cleared. An explosives expert is called in to safely detonate the device. About 20 kilometers away in the town of Kfar Tibnet, a team is checking for explosives in the garden of this house. Hundreds of cluster bombs are said to be scattered throughout this residential area.
So the mini excavator has prepared the ground for the searchers to now come in and do what's known as a manual excavation. This sort of environment presents a whole new list of challenges for the team. Being a residential area, there's a lot of garbage, there's a lot of scrap around, which can easily set off the metal detectors. So a lot of the work done by the searchers here is done using their bare hands.
It's extremely arduous and dangerous work. In August of 2007, Ali Batar and Abbas Jaber were killed trying to dismantle a cluster bomb in South Lebanon. 3 others were injured.
It affects everyone because we lose a colleague. I think the 2 accidents that we've had, they worked for us for a very, very long time. And of course, yeah, it is a reminder to everyone that it's a very, very dangerous job.
According to Lebanon's Mine Action Center, these explosives have killed more than 3,000 people and maimed thousands of others. 70-year-old Nafi Yavri has been harvesting her land for 40 years and knew a neighbor who was killed by a bomb in the ground. But she never thought she was at risk. That is until a mine clearance team told her.
وحياتك بعد شي ساعتين طلعت لنا برشاي يعني وطالع قال لي تعي لهن يا حاج وقف هون شغل قال لي تعي لهن حوشت الزيتونات كم مرة ريعسي علي هي الانب العنورية لقوها تحت الزيتون.
Southern Lebanon is rich in agriculture, but it's lost thousands of dollars because the land is considered compromised.
بيأثروا من ناحية إنه اللي عنده أرض ما في يروح لها يعني بيعتبر خسرها إلى حين ننظفها ونرجع نسلمه هي.
Even so, people are still using the land despite the dangers, because many of them rely on it for agriculture and farming.
Communities do take daily risks entering these areas, although they know it's unsafe to do so, because they have limited other livelihood opportunities.
All of these men have been affected by landmines. They're members of the Lebanese amputee football team, the only team of its kind in the Arab world. In 1991, Nazi Saab nearly lost his life helping the Lebanese army clear landmines in the capital Beirut. He stepped on one and it blew his leg off. But he didn't let it stop him from doing what he loves, playing football.
أنا رياضي من الأساس، لعب فوتبول مع فريق اتحادي. أصلنا على الجمعية شفنا الشباب وقالوا لي إذا بتحب تفوت معنا بفريق فوتبول، قلت لهم إيه بتمنى أنا، مع إنه كنت ميؤوس يعني، بس فتنا مع الشباب وجينا لعبنا فوتبول ورجعنا.
Today, 43-year-old Nazi is getting a new leg. It's a big day for him and his family, who drove more than 100 kilometers to this rehabilitation center outside Beirut.
يعني حياتي المعنوية شوي، حياتي المعنوية مما إني كنت ألعب فوتبول أنا قبل، وكنت عسكري بالجيش وروح حارب وأطلع يعني فجأة صرت عفرت إجر وعانيت بالأول كتير. لا رجعت ركبت طرف ورجعت صرت أسس شوي شوي. برضو إنه يعني ما مشيت لرجعنا جينا على الجمعية لهون، على الجمعية اللبنانية لرعاية المعوقين.
The Lebanese Welfare Association for the Handicapped helps thousands of Lebanese amputees with prosthetics and rehabilitation. More recently, their work has expanded to include Syrian refugees or those with congenital disabilities.
Nazi's cast has been filled with plaster. That mold is now being modified here. It will then be placed into the oven to dry, laminated, then have a socket placed on it for his residual limb to fit into. Then all that's left is to personalize it.
Patriotic Nazi has chosen to have his new leg covered with the Lebanese flag for good luck on the field.
Most of the patients who come to our services here for secondary to landmine injuries are younger patients. So if I have a very active patient who want to go hunting, for example, or play soccer, something like that, we have to make sure that what we design for them will be good enough and strong enough to carry out that activity.
Nazi tests out his new leg, while down the hall, fellow football teammate Jihad has his weekly physiotherapy for his lost arm.
بشهر رمضان 2012 كنت عم بتمشى بمنطقة عدنون اسمها منطقة سماحة الصغير. شفت جسم غريب. حاولت انه اخذه مشان ابلغ عنه القوى الامنية. للأسف أنا وماشي فيها فجر فيه.
The support of his family has helped him get through the toughest times.
غير البوكسة هي ما قدران يعني كل جسمي من هون كله يعني عندي درجة ثالثة كان حرق أنا. وجهي ما في اكل، كان حاطيني كلها نبريش، يعني كان صعب كثير علي. وضل حد مني يعني 24 حتى زفق بالليل الا موجوع ضل حد مني.
Today, Nazi and Jihad have their lives back. But there is still a lot more work to do in Lebanon before everyone is out of danger. And all those involved are committed to the country's full recovery.
When I go to do a task handover with people and I see the fact that boys and girls are running around playing football in a field, whereas before it was contaminated with explosive remnants of war, that's what it's all about. That's the end result to me.
You can see that the human touch and the final result of our work is that someone is really getting back to their life and then getting over the obstacles that they have faced.
Back on the football field, Nazi and his teammates are practicing to qualify for the World Cup in amputee football.
We have the only team in Lebanon and on Arab countries always in our games, they're doing their best. If they will lose, they will upset, of course. They don't believe that they are disabled and no, they always thought that we should win. Even they are playing with non-amputees players.
But for these men, whether or not they ever do make it to the World Cup is irrelevant, because they all feel they've already won.
The Mines Advisory Group estimate that 1 of every 5 people are still affected by cluster bombs and landmines across Lebanon. The country's goal is to clear all cluster munition from its land by 2016 and all landmines by 2020. Still to come on Assignment Asia.
A battle to save millions of children in Afghanistan from a contagious but completely preventable disease.
Our shows this week are focusing on fighters. And in Afghanistan, United Nations workers are on a mission to prevent more than 1 million children from contracting a disease long eradicated in the rest of the world. Maiva Bambuk traveled to the Afghan-Pakistan border to have a look.
At 4 years old, Bahara walks with a limp. She can hardly move her left arm, and she'll never be able to grasp with her left hand. But it could have been so much worse.
صبح که شد به عدد گولی گفتم با برشار کار اوجا که برد اجازه گول در شفاخانه دیدم که می دست پای از این فرق شد.
The diagnosis was polio, a highly infectious virus that attacks mostly children. Had Bahara's mother taken her to the doctor any later, she could have lost the use of her arms and legs permanently. She could even have died. Her father suspects the source of Bahara's infection came from across the border.
یک نفر آمده بود باز پس دیگه رفت.
بچه وقت آمده بود؟
یک آمو پای دیگه رفت.
او کی بوده؟
کلان بود. بازار خیلا کوچانه میبرن و باز پس میاد.
Most children who contract polio have symptoms similar to a common flu. But in extreme cases, the virus attacks the spinal cord, brain, or both, leaving them paralyzed, sometimes for decades or even the rest of their lives. While a simple vaccine has eradicated polio in most of the world, the virus still runs rampant in Pakistan and Afghanistan. In Afghanistan, the United Nations Children's Fund, UNICEF, is making progress in fighting the virus. But with thousands of people traveling between the two countries every day through one of the world's busiest borders, some are unknowingly carrying polio and spreading it.
So, आज कितने सुबह हुए अब तक?
That complicates the task of UNICEF workers like Shetty Joshi. He helped his native India win the battle against polio and hopes to do the same in Afghanistan.
It used to be around everyone in India. I mean, there was a time when you could easily see polio cases around you. It's only when you get involved in a program that you realize how it can affect somebody so much and the quality of life.
But in Afghanistan, the task is enormous, and the work begins at the border.
This is perhaps the most important battleground in Afghanistan's fight against polio. Right behind me is Pakistan's province of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. So vaccinating children at the border is the best way to prevent the virus from spreading from one country to the next.
Every day, as soon as a crossing opens, an army of UNICEF polio workers vaccinate as many children as they can.
If they have any children under the age of 5, they would bring them into the shed, into the shelter. We have the vaccination teams here who would be giving them polio vaccine. So all children under the age of 5 are the ones who will receive 2 drops of polio vaccine. So this is oral polio vaccine. These 2 children are under the age of 5, she is not. So they are given, and then on their finger they mark the child so that to indicate that the child has been vaccinated. So just in case if they meet the other team on the main road or any other teams, they would know, they can show the sign and tell them that my child is already vaccinated just now and it does not need to be vaccinated again.
These are potentially life-saving seconds for children from both sides of the border. The process couldn't be any simpler, but still, UNICEF is fighting an uphill battle because many children in Pakistan are falling through the cracks. Their religious extremists are holding up the campaign for political gains. And many Pakistanis are wary of campaigners after a doctor set up a fake vaccination program to help the CIA track down Osama bin Laden in 2011. But Afghans rarely refuse to vaccinate their children. That's because UNICEF has won the support of the mullahs, or religious elders. It's proven to be the secret to their success.
Religious leaders are the most respected and most credible sources of information for people anywhere in the world. People do look up to religious leaders and for advice, for information.
Every few months, UNICEF, together with the World Health Organization, invites Afghan mullahs to attend seminars to remind them why polio vaccines matter.
اگر اونا طفلشان واکسین نمیتن که در عقب دروازهشان واکسین میآید در آینده به فرج مصاب میشه اینا در برابر خدا و در برابر وجدان خود جوابگوی هستن و نیستن ما شما علماء کرام میخوایم که اینا برایشان تشریح و توضیح کنیم.
The appeal works. Imam Abdul Samad has been involved in Afghanistan's polio eradication campaign for the last 20 years. He says even the Taliban support the effort.
علمای ما در بین مردم افغانستان که 100% مسلمان هستند رول بسیار مهم و ارزنده را در امور اسلامی و اجتماعی که امور صحی یکی از مهمترین این امر محسوب میشه دارن. مردم ما از زبان علمایشان هر سخنی را که میشنون او را قبول میکنن و مورد قبول از اونهاست. تا بال ما با کدام عکس العمل نه ما و نه علمای ما مواجه نشدن.
UNICEF and the WHO offer the mullahs a stipend for their time, a small investment that has yielded high returns.
During the training, we are instructing the vaccination volunteer team. If you face with any problem with the family, you can go to Mullah, ask him to support you. And Mullah will solve your problem.
We involve them systematically over a period of time, inform them about the polio disease, give them all the basic information that they need to address any concerns that the community may have.
Imam Samad invited us to Friday prayer to show us how he's getting the message across.
وزارت صحت آمد مؤسسه یونیسف اونا تطبیق واکسین را یک دوره دیگه هم در افغانستان از روز یکشنبه شروع میکنن. ما از شما خواهش میکنیم که اطفال خود را در این واکسین از سن طفولیت تا 5 سالگی هر طفلی که باشه مریض باشه مهمان باشه خواب باشه در هر حالتی که باشه شما با واکسین بیارین و یک قطره واکسین بگیرین از فلج شدن طفلتان جلوگیری بکنید.
It is the Imam's blessing that allows UNICEF workers like Parisa and Azita to do their jobs without fear of coming under attack. Volunteers around the country vaccinate over 8 million children twice a year. On this one morning alone, these girls have given polio drops to 45 children.
در سر خانهشان تک تک میزنیم باز او اطفالش اگه در خانه بود تو آرام میاره اگه در بیرون هم بود تو هم باز در پیش خانهشان میارن که واکسین کنیم باز میفهمیم که از این خانه است باز از خاطر که تباشی در خانهشان اشتم میکنیم.
Although it was too late for victims like Bahara, the efforts of UNICEF and the mullahs could save millions of children's lives. Still, Joshi says, the battle is far from over.
You're almost there, aren't you?
Not really. Polio is not the game of 99%. It's either 100%, either we eradicate it or we have not eradicated. So as long as we have one polio case anywhere in the world, nobody is safe. We have seen so many instances in the past when virus just travels. I mean, virus has traveled from India to Africa, from Africa all the way up to Indonesia.
For Simon Asia, this is Maeva Bembok, Afghanistan.
The fight against polio is not only limited to Afghanistan. As Maeva mentioned, UN workers are finding difficulties in neighboring Pakistan, and the disease remains in Nigeria and Syria. Now stay with us after the break.
The fight for justice in India, by victims of the most brutal attacks.
It only takes a moment for someone's life to change forever. And for hundreds, if not thousands of women across India, that moment came so unexpectedly and scarred them for the rest of their lives. As Karishma Vyash reports, victims and advocates are getting together to fight for better laws and harsher punishments for those who commit those vicious attacks.
Sonali Mukherjee rarely leaves this room. It's here with her family that she feels safe, protected from the glares and gossip of complete strangers. She was a 17-year-old sociology student who dreamt of getting an office job to support her family. But that all changed when 3 men from her neighborhood broke into her home and threw acid on her. Her only crime was rebuffing their advances. Sonali has 70% burns to her body. In fact, doctors thought she would never survive. Suffering from agonizing pain in her hospital bed, she remembers praying to God.
तो बस इतनी ज़िंदगी मुझे दे देना, इतनी सांसें दे देना, ताकि मैं मेरे साथ अन्याय हुआ है, अत्याचार हुआ है, मैं उसका सामना कर सकूं हिम्मत के साथ और उन लोगों से बदला ले सकूं और आगे उनको पनिशमेंट करना अपने हिसाब से, लेकिन मैं देखना चाहती हूं कि क्या होता है, उनका पनिशमेंट मैं देखना चाहती हूँ, मेरी सांसें उतने दिनों तक छोड़ देना। मैंने बस इतनी प्रार्थना की थी और शायद ईश्वर ने मेरी प्रार्थना को उस वक्त सुना था, ताकि आज मैं आप लोगों के बीच जिंदा हूँ।
9 years on, that day still hasn't come. Despite being convicted, her attackers only spent 2.5 years in prison. Her lawyer suspects it was because of a weak police investigation.
मेरे लिए वो दिन इतना सदमा लगा, मुझे इतना शॉकिंग था। मैंने कहा भगवान, हम किस समाज में जीते हैं? ये कानून, ये सरकार, ये न्याय, ये पुलिस, ये सब क्या सिर्फ दिखावे के लिए है? क्या सच में ये इंसाफ करती है?
Tens of thousands of Indians asked themselves these very questions after the brutal rape and murder of a 23-year-old physiotherapy student in Delhi in December 2012. Large crowds protested outside the Indian Parliament, saying they were fed up with the rising number of assaults on women and what they called an apathetic government and a rampantly corrupt police force. Some of those protests turned violent. The demonstrators demanded immediate reforms to laws and harsher punishments for convicted perpetrators. It was under this overwhelming pressure that the government passed the Criminal Law Amendment Bill in March 2013, which recognises for the first time a number of crimes like acid attacks and increases minimum punishment from 7 years to 10. But women's rights activists like parliamentarian Brinda Karat says the law does not go far enough.
You know, I've been dealing with so many cases of victims of acid attack, and just now I'm dealing with a case where 2 young girls, they were attacked and both of them have lost their vision entirely, right here in Delhi. And you'll be shocked to hear that there has not been a single rupee paid either for their medical rehabilitation or for any type of rehabilitation. I mean, I think that is cruelty beyond measure. And I think that is state cruelty.
There are no official records kept of acid attacks in India, but activists believe there's anywhere between 100 and 1,000 assaults a year. They admit the number of reported cases is rising. Women's groups say the government is failing to meet its responsibility to victims, who often have to pay tens of thousands of dollars for medical treatment.
If we accept and recognize the principle of due diligence, which means that the state must protect its women citizens, if a woman is subjected to an acid attack, there is obviously a failure on the part of the state to protect her. Therefore, there is an obligation on the state to then make sure that her medical and other concerns are met with.
Many are also trying to lobby the government to restrict the sale of hydrochloric, sulfuric and nitric acid, substances most commonly used for attacks.
Acid is as easy to buy in India as a paintbrush, and it's almost as cheap. It's available at any local hardware store for less than $1. But this harmless-looking bottle has destroyed the lives of thousands of Indian women.
Vrinda Grover is a lawyer and human rights activist who has been lobbying the government to monitor the sale of acid in India, much like neighbouring Bangladesh, where there is mandatory registration for both sellers and buyers.
When acid is used as a weapon, you will have to regulate it as you would regulate the sale of any arm or other form of weapon, which you would not say, well, just because X is being used as a weapon, a gun, we don't care how it's going to be sold. It actually has an equally lethal, if not worse effect than any other form of armament that we know.
This is of little comfort to Sonali Mukherjee. She has already had 26 surgeries and has spent around $60,000 on medical care. But her life will never be the same again.
लड़की की ज़िंदगी उसके कितने सपने होते हैं तो एक पल में सब खत्म हो गया तो अक्सर मैंने सपने देखना ही बंद कर दिया है कुछ सोचना बंद कर दिया है फ़िलहाल तो अपनी ज़िंदगी आगे ईश्वर के हवाले किया है लेकिन खिड़की के दिल से एक आवाज़ निकलती है मैं चाहती हूँ कि ये सब बंद हो सरकार अब जागे कि हम उसके परिवार की लड़की हैं वो हम अलग नहीं हैं समाज की लड़की हैं समाज आगे आए ऐसी घटनाओं को रोकने के महिलाओं को आगे आना होगा हम अपने परिवार से अपने समाज से ऐसे इंसानों को बहिष्कार करें जो किसी की लड़की का किसी की इंसान की ज़िंदगी को तबाह करके आया है तो कानून बदले तो ये सब हो ताकि मुझे तसल्ली होगी ज़ख्मों के मरहम लगेगा अगर ये सब बंद हो जाए किसी और लड़की को फिर एसिड से चलना ना पड़े मुझे बहुत खुशी होगी.
For Assignment Asia, I'm Karishma Vyas in New Delhi.
Since we filmed that story, Sonali Mukherjee has undergone more surgery to help in her recovery. She also continues her fight for justice. You can find out more about this and all the stories on this week's program on our website, www.assignment-asia.com.
Share your thoughts and contribute story ideas for future shows by contacting us on social media.
That's it for this week's program. I'm Natalie Carney. Thank you for watching and join us again on Assignment Asia.